The Bhagavad Gita, 5th chapter, Renunciation and Yoga of Works. Arjuna's practical mind is perplexed. Here are desireless works, the principle of yoga, and renunciation works, the principle of Sankhya, put together side by side as if part of one method, yet there is no evident reconciliation between them. The Gita insists that Sankhya and Yoga are one in their principle and aim. They differ only in their method and starting point. Sankhya starts with intellectual discrimination and analysis. Yoga proceeds by works. In the end, the two paths coalesce and lead to the same goal. In their integrality, each contains the other. The painful process of outward sannyasa is an unnecessary process. The true sannyasa of action is the reposing of all works on the Brahman. The yoga of works is the offering of all action to the Lord, which induces as its culmination an inner and not an outer, a spiritual, not a physical, giving up of works into the Brahman, into the being of the Lord. When works are thus reposed on the Brahman, the personality of the instrumental doer ceases. Though he acts, he does nothing, for he has given up not only the fruit of his works, but the works themselves, and the doing of them to the Lord. The divine then takes the burden of works from him. The supreme becomes the doer and the act and the result. The Gita, after speaking of the perfect equality of the Brahman knower, who has risen into the Brahman consciousness, develops in 9 verses that follow its idea of Brahma Yoga and of Nirvana in the Brahman. Here we have a process of yoga that brings in an element which seems quite other than the yoga of works, and other even than the pure yoga of knowledge by discrimination and contemplation. It belongs in all its characteristic features to the system, introduces the psychophysical ascesis of Raja Yoga. Are we to suppose that the Gita gives this process in that sense as the last movement of a release by dissolution, or only as a special means and a strong aid to overcome the outward-going mind? Is this the finale, the climax, the last word? We shall find reason to regard it as both a special means, an aid, and at least one gate of a final departure, not by dissolution, but by an uplifting to the supracosmic existence. For even here in this passage, this is not the last word. The last word, the finale, the climax, comes in a verse that follows and is the last couplet of the chapter. We get back to the great idea of the Gita, the idea of the Purushottama. Though that name is not given till close upon the end, it is always that which Krishna means by his I and me, the divine who is there as the one self in our timeless, immutable being, who is present too in the world, in all existences, in all activities, the master of the silence and the peace, the master of the power and the action, who is here incarnate as the divine charioteer of the stupendous conflict, the transcendent, the self, the all, the master of every individual being. That this is the drift of the meaning becomes clearer when we have fathomed the sense of the 6th chapter, which is a large comment on and a full development of the idea of these closing verses of the 5th.
Arjuna uvacha sannyasaṁ karmaṇaṁ krishna punaryogaṁ ca shansasi yachreya etayorekam tanme brūhi sunishchitam. Sri Bhagavan uvacha sannyasah karmayogascha nishreyasakaravuhu ayostu karma sannyasat karma yogo visushyate jneyassa nitya sannyasi yo na dveshti na kankshati Nirdvandvo महाबाहो सुखं बन्धात् प्रमुच्यते। सांख्ययोगौ पृथक् बालाः प्रवदन्ति न पण्डिताः। एकमप्यास्थितः सम्यगुभयोर्विन्दते फलम्। यत्साङ्ख्यैः प्राप्यते स्थानं तद्योगैरपि गम्यते। एकं साङ्ख्यं च योगं च यः पश्यति स पश्यति। संन्यासस्तु महाबाहो दुःखमाप्तुमयोगतः। योगयुक्तो मुनिर्ब्रह्मो न चिरेणाधिगच्छति। योगयुक्तो विशुद्धात्मा विजितात्मा जितेन्द्रियः। सर्वभूतात्मभूतात्मा कुर्वन्नपि न लिप्यते। नैव किञ्चित् करोमीति युक्तो मन्येत तत्त्ववित्। पश्यन् शृण्वन् स्पृशन् जिघ्रन् अश्नन् गच्छन् स्वपन् श्वसन् प्रलपन् विसृजन् गृह्णन् उन्मिषन् निमिषन्नपि। इन्द्रियाणीन्द्रियार्थेषु वर्तन्त इति धारयन् ब्रह्मण्याधाय कर्माणि सङ्गं त्यक्त्वा करोति यः। लिप्यते न स पापेन पद्मपत्रमिवाम्भसा। कायेन मनसा बुद्ध्या केवलैरिन्द्रियैरपि योगिनः कर्म कुर्वन्ति सङ्गं त्यक्त्वात्मशुद्धये। युक्तः कर्मफलं त्यक्त्वा शान्तिमाप्नोति नैष्ठिकीम्। अयुक्तः कामकारेण फले सक्तो निबध्यते। सर्वकर्माणि मनसा सन्न्यस्यास्ते सुखं वशी। नवद्वारे पुरे देही नैव कुर्वन्न कारयन्। न कर्तृत्वं न कर्माणि लोकस्य सृजति प्रभुः। न कर्मफलसंयोगं स्वभावस्तु प्रवर्तते। नादत्ते कस्यचित् पापं न चैव सुकृतं विभुः। अज्ञानेनावृतं ज्ञानं तेन मुह्यन्ति जन्तवः। ज्ञानेन तु तदज्ञानं येषान्नाशितमात्मनः। तेषामादित्यवज्ञानं प्रकाशयति तत्परं। तद्बुद्धयस्तदात्मानस्तन्निष्ठास्तत्परायणाः। गच्छन्त्य पुनरावृत्तिं ज्ञाननिर्धूतकल्मषाः। विद्याविनयसम्पन्ने ब्राह्मणे गविहस्तिनि। शुनि चैव श्वपाके च पण्डिताः समदर्शिनः। इहैव तैर्जितः सर्गो येषां साम्ये स्थितं मनः। निर्दोषं हि समं ब्रह्म तस्मात् ब्रह्मणि ते स्थिताः। न प्रहृष्येत् प्रियं प्राप्य नोद्विजेत् प्राप्य चाप्रियं। स्थिरबुद्धिरसम्मूढो ब्रह्मविद् ब्रह्मणि स्थितः। बाह्यस्पर्शेष्वसक्तात्मा विन्दत्यात्मनि यत्सुखं। स ब्रह्मयोगयुक्तात्मा सुखमक्षय्यमश्नुते। ये हि संस्पर्शजा भोगा दुःखयोनय एव ते। आद्यन्तवन्तः कौन्तेय न तेषु रमते बुधः। शक्नोति हैव यः सोढुं प्राक्शरीरविमोक्षणात्। कामक्रोधोद्भवं वेगं स युक्तः स सुखी नरः। योऽन्तः सुखोऽन्तरारामस्तथान्तर्ज्योतिरेव यः। स योगी ब्रह्मनिर्वाणं ब्रह्मभूतोऽधिगच्छति। लभन्ते ब्रह्मनिर्वाणं ऋषयः क्षीणकल्मषाः। छिन्नद्वैधायतात्मानः सर्वभूतहिते रताः। कामक्रोधवियुक्तानां यतीनां यतचेतसाम् अभितो ब्रह्मनिर्वाणं वर्तते विदितात्मनाम् स्पर्शान् कृत्वा बहिर्बाह्यांश्चक्षुश्चैवान्तरे भ्रुवोः प्राणापानौ समौ कृत्वा नासाभ्यन्तरचारिणौ यतेन्द्रियमनोबुद्धिर्मुनिर्मोक्षपरायणः विगतेच्छाभयक्रोधो यः सदा मुक्त एव सः भोक्तारं यज्ञतपसां सर्वलोकमहेश्वरं सुहृदं सर्वभूतानां ज्ञात्वा मां शान्तिमृच्छति। इति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासूपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुनसंवादे कर्मसन्न्यासयोगो नाम पञ्चमोऽध्यायः। श्रीकृष्णार्पणमस्तु। हरये नमः। हरये नमः। हरये नमः।
The Bhagavad Gita, 5th chapter, Renunciation and the Yoga of Works. Arjuna said, Thou declarest to me the renunciation of works, O Krishna, and again thou declarest to me yoga. Which one of these is the better way? That tell me with a clear decisiveness. The Blessed Lord said, Renunciation and yoga of works both bring about the soul's salvation, but of the two, the yoga of works is distinguished above the renunciation of works. He should be known as always a sannyasin, even when he is doing action, who neither dislikes nor desires. For, free from the dualities, he is released easily and happily from the bondage. Children speak of Sankhya and Yoga apart from each other, not the wise. If a man applies himself integrally to the one, he gets the fruit of both. The status which is attained by the Sankhya, to that the men of the Yoga also arrive. Who sees Sankhya and Yoga as one, he sees. But renunciation, O mighty armed, is difficult to attain without Yoga. The sage who has Yoga attains soon to the Brahman. He who is in Yoga, the pure soul, master of his self, who has conquered the senses, whose self becomes the self of all existences, of all things that have become. Even though he does works, he is not involved in them. The man who knows the principles of things thinks, his mind in yoga with the inactive impersonal, I am doing nothing. When he sees, hears, tastes, smells, eats, moves, sleeps, breathes, speaks, takes, ejects, opens his eyes or closes them, he holds that it is only the senses acting upon the objects of the senses. He who, having abandoned attachment, acts reposing his works on the Brahman, is not stained by sin, even as water clings not to the lotus leaf. Therefore the yogins do works with the body, mind, understanding, or even merely with the organs of action, abandoning attachment for self-purification. By abandoning attachment to the fruits of works, the soul in union with Brahman attains to peace of wrapped foundation in Brahman. But the soul not in union is attached to the fruit and bound by the action of desire. The embodied soul, perfectly controlling its nature, having renounced all its actions by the mind, inwardly, not outwardly, sits serenely in its 9-gated city, neither doing nor causing to be done. The Lord neither creates the works of the world, nor the state of the doer, nor the joining of the works to the fruit. Nature works out these things. The all-pervading impersonal accepts neither the sin nor the virtue of any. Knowledge is enveloped by ignorance. Thereby creatures are bewildered. Verily, in whom ignorance is destroyed by self-knowledge, In them knowledge lights up like a sun the Supreme Self within them, turning their discerning mind to that, directing their whole conscious being to that, making that their whole aim and the sole object of their devotion. They go whence there is no return, their sins washed by the waters of knowledge. Sages see with an equal eye the learned and cultured Brahmin, the cow, the elephant, the dog, the outcast. Even here on earth they have conquered the creation whose mind is established in equality. The equal Brahman is faultless, therefore they live in the Brahman. With intelligence stable, unbewildered, the knower of Brahman, living in the Brahman, neither rejoices on obtaining what is pleasant, nor sorrows on obtaining what is unpleasant. When the soul is no longer attached to the touches of outward things, then one finds the happiness that exists in the self. Such a one enjoys an imperishable happiness, because his self is in yoga, yukta, by yoga with the Brahman. The enjoyments born of the touches of things are causes of sorrow. They have a beginning and an end. Therefore the sage, the man of awakened understanding, buddhi, does not place his delight in these. He who can bear here in the body the velocity of wrath and desire is the yogin, the happy man. He who has the inner happiness and the inner ease and repose and the inner light, that yogin becomes the Brahman and reaches self-extinction in the Brahman. Brahma Nirvanam. Sages win nirvana in the Brahman, they in whom the stains of sin are effaced and the knot of doubt is cut asunder, masters of their selves who are occupied in doing good to all creatures. Yatis, those who practice self-mastery by yoga and austerity, who are delivered from the desire and wrath, and have gained self-mastery. For them nirvana in the Brahman exists all about them, encompasses them. They already live in it because they have knowledge of the self. Having put outside of himself all outward touches, and concentrated the vision between the eyebrows, and made equal the prana and the apana, moving within the nostrils, having controlled the senses, the mind and the understanding, the sage devoted to liberation, from whom desire and wrath and fear have passed away, is ever free. When a man has known me as the enjoyer of sacrifice and tapasya, of all ascesis and energisms, the mighty Lord of all the worlds, the friend of all creatures, he comes by the peace. Thus ends the 5th chapter of the Yoga of the Renunciation of Works from the Bhagavad Gita Upanishad, stating the knowledge of Brahman and the science of yoga through the conversation of Sri Krishna and Arjuna. Om, peace, peace, peace.